Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there, welcome back.
So we're going to do something a little bit different. First off, the whole premise of this video is going to be just about the IGIGI. Anunnaki will intersperse Homo Capensis. The reality that, again, we've never been alone. And they've always wanted to hide their presence amongst us. These beings that actually control everything on the planet. From the darkness, from the shadows, through the use of different humans and human hybrids. When you get down to it, we're all kind of hybrids here. This planet has been a melting pot, to say the least. And the history is far, far older than we think. And I just pulled this up. This is the first video when I searched IGIGI that caught my eye. And I haven't really looked at it or anything. I just wanted this. So here you see context. They're going to tell you the context that this is all about. And you get the little Wikipedia. The Anunnaki are a group of deities of the ancient Sumerians, Akkadians, Assyrians, and Babylonians. Wow, maybe we should click for more so we understand this the proper way.
I know, we need to understand it the way they want us to understand it, of course.
Yes, so, what do they want to tell us? They're a group of deities, again, of these, Fertile Crescent civilizations. If you remember the Fertile Crescent, this is where we all came from. This is what we were at least taught back in the 60s and 70s and into the 80s. This is where civilization just sprung up from. But now we know that there's older civilizations out there, perhaps way older than what they were telling us about, this popping up 5,000 years ago, 5,500 years ago. As they've told us so many things that are just incorrect. In the earliest Sumerian writings about them, which come from the post-Akkadian period, the Anunnaki are deities in the pantheon, descendants of An and Ki, the god of the heavens and the goddess of the earth, and their primary function was to decree the fates of humanity. And so they're going to anthropomorphize this into basically being, the powers of nature and all. But was this the case? I think what really gets confusing is how, there are beings that we could take as personifications of the powers of nature. Then there are beings that were very real and physical, in the sense that people that were living on the planet in that time would see them as real, solid beings. And, you have this mix of so many different things going on. And then there's beings that we could contact in meditation that are on higher planes of existence as well, but they can watch over us, and they do watch over us, It's interesting when you look at all the... if you ever watched any of those old myths where, you remember Harry Hamlin? He was an actor that did one of those classic films back in the 70s, and I don't know if it was Jason and the Argonauts. I forget which one it was. You remember those ones that had Medusa and all the myths brought to life, the Greco-Roman myths. And how the gods would be there up in the sky just looking down at us and saying, oh, well, look at this one. He's a good one. I think this is, a worthy person to, support. And how, this is something that we could take from the Bible, too. Look at the book of Job. Hey, look at Job. Look at my servant Job. He's wonderful. So let's torture him.
That was sad.
And Job is supposed to be the oldest book of the biblical texts. And again, when you put the Bible into it, it's been hand-selected over the years, and things have been changed and distorted. But again, it's just another collection of these mythos, albeit many of these have a purpose behind them to, again, help us to frame our view of the world, to tell us what things really mean. And again, we should all be going inside to find the meanings, meditating on them, stilling the mind, and see what comes through. But the name Anunnaki is derived from An, the Sumerian god of the sky. Do you know, it was interesting too, because when we go to Sanskrit, Anu, A-N-U, which again, Anu is the father of Enlil and Enki, the two famous brothers that are always in conflict with each other, especially when it comes to what to do over humanity. As in the Sumerian tales, it's Enki that saves humanity from the flood and warns. Again, there's so many different names, but the Sumerian version of Noah, of which is also again known by several names, that hey, flood's coming, you better prepare. Let's not let everybody get destroyed, even though Enlil wants to destroy everybody. Well, Anu is their father. Again, it's curious that in Sanskrit, Anu can also be basically translated as an atom, or a building block of this universe. So there's so many different layers to this. And as we were alluding to, many beings, well, there are beings that are basically forces of nature. There are beings that were very real and appear to us to be flesh and blood, very similar to us. And then there's beings that we could contact on different planes, different densities of existence. All of the above existed. And what we have is now everything intermingled so much, and I do feel it's completely done on purpose so that we can't distinguish between this and that, and then we tend to lump them all together. And then you'll get people of a fundamentalist mindset that say, well, if it isn't God, if it isn't angels, it's all demons. And the original word demon comes from daemon, which basically meant nature spirit. And when you look into it, those nature spirits were, for the most part, benevolent. Not malevolent, benevolent. But again, the power structure on this planet is not one that is user-friendly for the humans on the planet.
No, it's very friendly in the sense that it controls what the humans do on this planet. So that we can pretty much hang our hat on, is wherever we turn, wherever we go, if there's control to be had, it's had. So that's why we need to step back and have a solid understanding of our surroundings so we are not so easily hurted.
And when we read the legend of Gilgamesh, and again, these Sumerian stories, you could find all the biblical stories in these Sumerian stories, and from other sources as well, if you look closely enough. And as we've said, really there's nothing new in the biblical tales. They're again rehashing. And we see Gilgamesh, and Gilgamesh is what may be termed a demigod, half human, half non-human. And then it's interesting how in all these Greco-Roman stories we have the same things going on. We have these, a lot of times the heroes. I mean, Hercules was a demigod, right? And the heroes a lot of times are half and half. How could it be that something other than human could mate with humans and literally have offspring? And when we look at some of the sizes of the giants that were born, they're like towering way into the sky. Not like they're 12 feet tall. They're measuring them in stadia, and they're measuring them in units that are making them out to be almost the size of mountains in some cases. How could that possibly be coming from a woman's womb? Again, there's so many things interwoven that it becomes almost impossible if you're going to only use the left brain to analyze things, to get to the absolute facts of the matter. There was something that Linda Moulton Howe had released yesterday showing structures in Antarctica tens of millions of years old. Tens of millions of years old. How long have intelligent beings been on this planet? Far longer than Homo sapiens, that's for sure. As we see here, this demigod he could just pick up people like you would pick up your rag doll. He's so big. Is that just basically, again, bringing some grandeur to this person that was put in such a revered state? I don't know. They look pretty terrified. Looks like he's got a whip.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they look more terrified than they are worshiping.
Yeah, and then there's all these legends of giants all over the globe. Why we have these winged discs? Because there's so many different ways we could view this too. As you know, you're looking at some beings that are commonly associated with the IGIGI and the Annunaki, and then we see the horns too. Interesting how Moses, after being at the burning bush, he appeared to have horns coming from his head. And there are those that will say, no, that's just the rays of God, the being in the presence of God that just shone forth from him. Or, you know, again, when we look at some of these depictions of certain beings, you know, we could look to Dagon and to Owans, who are viewed to be like almost fish-like men, you know, wearing scales on them. What are they really trying to say? You know, are they saying when we look at the winged disc that they came down in UFOs? Is that a representation of a Merkaba, perhaps? Meaning that these are interdimensional beings that are able to go in between dimensions. There's so many different ways to look at this. And why the horns? Why does Satan have horns? You know, the oldest depiction we have of a being that is known as the Lord of the Woods, in some circles called Cernunnos, others Hern. Others would even equate him with a pre-Shiva Shiva. Horns, again, the horns. But what Cindy has got was there were beings that were horned. Mm-hmm. You remember? Mm-hmm. Now we're doing something a little different, guys, because we've covered so much in our channelings that we haven't gotten to fully share with you on a particular topic. So I'm going to be trying to jog Cindy's mind on some of the downloads that we've gotten to talk about this. There's been so many different races on this planet, so many different humanoid and reptilian and other beings. Gosh, it'd be hard to probably categorize them all.
Right. Well, usually when we get this information, I'm in a pretty relaxed state. So, you know, I don't know, whatever is going to come up is going to come up. Whatever I can pull back will come back. Otherwise, it's just kind of blank.
But you did see a being that actually had horns or horn-like appendages coming out of their skull. It was a natural part of these beings.
Yeah, definitely it is, and I can still see it. It's quite awkward, but you know, different planet, somehow here on Earth, able to recreate themselves or come to Earth and explore Earth. But they definitely exist.
And again, you know, the Anunnaki term is a very, very broad one. You know, because there could be many different species involved with the term Anunnaki. Again, if we follow Sitchin's view of it, it just kind of means, you know, those from whom the heavens came. Well, you know, when we look back to Atlantis, for instance, we see that it was a composition of so many different beings coming and going. And Cindy and I, when we were out in the desert living in our RV right next to the Nevada test site, you know, close to Area 51 and all, we would see a portal open up almost every night. Mm-hmm. And we see ships come out of a portal and they would go over to the Nevada test site. And Cindy, with her ability, and sometimes they would kind of wink at us. Mm-hmm. You know, sometimes they would brighten at a certain point because of mental connection. You know, many beings, especially beings a little bit more developed than us typically, are very telepathic. And, you know, that's kind of the universal language out there is telepathy.
Well, they definitely understand when they're being observed. That's something that they know how to pick up that signature and hone in on it.
Yes, and some of these beings, like the ones we would see almost every single night, going over, just popping out of a portal because there would be nothing, and then all of a sudden you would see one ship, and when it got to a certain point where that ship was about to disappear over the test site, another ship would come out. And we did get some photos and video of that, which we have shared in the past too. Though on Evolutionary now, I've had to be moving everything towards private, so hopefully they won't find a third strike video to get rid of the channel, because that's what they're looking to do. Again, control, control, control. But we would see them, and Cindy could see the beings on the ships, and they were kind of neutral. I mean, I wouldn't say they were benevolent. I wouldn't say they were malevolent. They were just doing their thing.
Yeah, they were living their life. They were doing their job. They were just going about what, whatever they're supposed to be doing. So minding their own business, basically. You can say that.
And there's a lot of species that are like that, that are basically, I mean, they're not malevolent. They're not benevolent. They're kind of neutral, and many of them, they don't care either way about humans. They don't necessarily see in a fundamentalist mindset. It's good and evil. That's it. It's good or it's evil. It's one or the other. Where reality is an infinite variety of shades of gray. Going all the way up towards being as dark gets, and then as light gets. This is the reality of the duality of what we have. So there's so many species out there that truly, it's just like somebody from a different country trading, and you might see something happen, and you might be in a foreign land, and maybe you see some injustice going on, and maybe you have a little empathy for those that are suffering this injustice, but at the same time, you view it like, well, I'm just doing my job. I feel bad for them, but I'm not going to interfere. And you have a lot of that goes on.
Yeah, you do. You do.
So, it's interesting to see. We see all these things time and time again. And again, this is a depiction of a lion who looks pretty damn small.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if that's a lion, then how big is the person? And what's also interesting is Cindy and I have too seen this writing in visions when we're in a meditative state or a out-of-body experience. We both have. There's so much evidence of the fact that people have seen beings that look different than us, that look to be wearing apparatus in some places, many that are giants. That is just a given. Again, interesting that they got something in a box that looks kind of like, again, lions. As you have all these different beings throughout history. And then we have, of course, the whole legend that comes about, like, well, why was humanity created? Well, in the Sumerian version, the IGIGI, or these beings that are not at the top of the food chain as far as having power over the beings on this planet and other planets, well, they rebel, and so a worker race is created. And thus we see things like this. Humans strung together at the neck, hands tied behind their back. Meanwhile, there's somebody with power floating by on the sky. So does this mean he's in a ship? Does this mean he has a Merkaba? What's really going on here? And were we really created as a slave race? Now, from the get-go, the eternal soul, if we look again towards the east, that's something and in the mystery traditions, comes from source. Source is within all of us. So nobody created us in that sense. Did they create the vehicles that we're utilizing to get around in this 3D reality that's heading towards 4D? Yeah, they might have modified the vehicles. It's just like a mechanic modifying your car.
But I think more of a downgraded sense. I think we lost a lot of abilities.
Well, this is what I have always gotten from the guides. They didn't upgrade us. Their creation, quote unquote, is a distortion. This is a downgrade. This is a downgrade so that we can no longer communicate telepathically. This is, giving us fluoridated water and GMO foods and being surrounded by frequencies that inhibit the other extrasensory perceptions that we would normally have and that we do have when we're in different time periods. And we see these reptilian beings with these cone heads and statues from all over the globe. We see them in Mesoamerica, we see them over in Acadia, Sumeria, Babylon, and we see all these skulls that they tell us these skulls are just simply the product of beautification. That the locals thought that, wow, this is going to be really hot. I want to strap boards to my head, because the more elongated I could make my baby's skull, the more beautiful they're going to be. Well, how do you explain that the forma magnum is not in the same spot as Homo sapiens sapiens? And that's where the spine goes through. That's the stem right there. How about the fact that it doesn't have the same set of plates? It doesn't have our parietals. For instance, the plate structure of the skull is different. Absolutely different. These are different species. Yes, there are some that used to emulate the gods and would do that because they saw these beings, able to do magic and miracles. So they wanted to emulate them. But that's not all of them. And again, we have that famous line that kingship came from on high. And as we were, looking at a depiction here of a bust of, I believe, Nefertiti, why the big hat? Is it to cover a big head? There are a lot of skulls that you cannot explain on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean where the head is just different. And we see the Pope hats. And, again, this is all over the globe. How about Akhenaten? Was he really Homo sapiens sapiens? I don't think so. I really don't think so. I mean, all the evidence is out there in front of us. As we said, some people still have vestiges of that. Our DNA is mixed with so many different beings. But then again, this was a very, very busy place. It still is a very, very busy place with all sorts of intelligent beings coming and going. Mm-hmm. All sorts of intelligent beings. And this one's not so pleasant, but now this is more like the skull of the current one that's here still. When we're talking about IGIGI, would you agree?
Yeah, they have more of a bulbous type of head.
Yes. So the one that's still controlling the show, now there is a council of beings. There were 3 original IGIGI that were here. 2 have, apparently moved on to a different density and left this density. Again, what we call death is just a shifting of frequency. And there's one still here. But see, this is how they are losing their power as we go on up in vibration. Would you say this is a pretty good likeness?
Yeah, with the exception the face is a little bit bigger, but the head is really a good rendition.
Yeah, so that's pretty much like the skull of the original IGIGI that is still here on the planet. And when we were talking, because we've shared, there's a lot we haven't shared. We were talking about, out of all the powers that be that we see, which ones are actually, some of the highest up? And truly, a lot of the power still resides in the church, mm-hmm. With the popes, because they do communicate directly. They understand that And it's interesting too, because they know what they're giving us religion-wise is not accurate.
No, they know for sure, and it's really wicked. And all these people are, believing in them in the sense that there's some pure being that wants to bring all of this good upon people, and it's just the most wicked thing of manipulation. This kind of manipulation is preying on people's desire to be part of something bigger than themselves and part of something pure and part of something that's good, that they know to be good, because their day-to-day life is so difficult. They just want a taste of something pure, and they prey on that, and it's just sad.
It is sad, and even though we know, most of us here probably have come out of the Abrahamic tradition, whether it's Christianity, Islam, or Judaism, simply because, it's almost 2/3 of the people on the planet that come out of this tradition. It's the dominant tradition on the planet. And how many people feel those wonderful memories of Christmas time? Even though, maybe Yeshua wasn't born on December 25th, maybe that's all stuff that, again, is relating to the solstice, and then, things along those lines. There's so much we could go into. There's so many layers. We've shown before how you have the depictions of, Mary holding the baby Jesus, and how that is really, taken again from Isis and Horus. Something older. There's these older legends. There's Mithras. There's Dionysus. There's all these different legends that everything is built upon. Yeshua was basically here as somebody that was trying to teach us ascension principles, because, he was coming 2,000 years ago. He was coming in a timeline where it's time to wake people up, because you know what? We're going to be getting out of the Kali Yuga. We're going to have to learn some truths and learn how to progress spiritually. And then, of course, everything gets hijacked, waylaid, turned into a blood sacrifice, and distorted, so that the whole true message of love and unity and moving towards unity consciousness, understanding that each one of us is a cell and the body is something bigger. We need to be working in a symbiotic relationship, not against each other. But again, this world is controlled by the adversary. And this is a pretty decent depiction of one of those adversaries that has been controlling the narrative. So again, we see vestiges in the fact that there have been so many different humanoid beings upon this planet, and not all just simply having this typical, what we might call Homo Capensis type of skull. There's many, many different types. It's a distortion to talk about Neanderthals and Denisovans as being less than Homo sapiens. In fact, they were more connected to the earth. They felt a greater connection to the earth. Even though they're not here with us now, there's a reason why. And we might be seeing the reason why they're not here manifesting in ourselves right now with everything that is going on, if you guys understand.
Well, they were even less controllable.
They were less controllable than us. Again, this is why Homo sapiens is the new version. More compliant, more controllable. Denisovans and Neanderthals, physically larger, bigger, stronger, bigger brains. Better adapted for this climate, even, for the life on this planet. Very, very interesting how things get really put together. So there's a lot of different takes, and you will find people, going towards one side or another. Some will say this is all just astrotheology. Other people will say this is all just, beings coming here in their ships, and ignore the interdimensional aspect of it. There's a lot going on, and usually what really can be said is that it's all of the above, but we just have to see how do we sort these things out. And this title, you see the IGIGI 300 astronauts who served the Anunnaki revolt against Enlil. And I've given a bunch of these other, Here you see a skull from pre-Inca South America, and there's Egypt right next to it. I've given a bunch of other perspectives here for you guys to look through, and you can see people, you know, have different opinions on it. IGIGI, the enigmatic deities that rebelled against the Anunnaki, and then we have the legends of, you know, the gods against the giants, and then, you know, the elder gods against the titans. Yeah, there's all these different legends. We could go to the Aesir and the Vanir, and then what's left over becomes unified depending on where we're looking. There's all these different mythologies. Interesting here, the IGIGI serve the Anunnaki. The Greek word Egregors, meaning wakeful, maybe an influence of the Babylonian-ish term IGIGI. Now, egregores are thought forms. So we can create egregores. We could create watchers. When you look to what real demons mostly are, and what my experience has been, is many of them are thought forms. Many of those, you know, black, I guess, you know, to me they look like black holes, in that they just kind of block out any light that's around them, often with reddish eyes. Shadow people could be put into this category too. These type of things don't really have a soul, so to speak. There's no source in them. They are thought forms and constructs created by somebody that knows how to use the life force in order to make servitors, to do deeds.
Aren't these beings, whoever makes them is karmically responsible, though?
Yes, yes. You are karmically responsible for whatever they do. And thus, this is the legend of the golem, which, you know, modern day recreation, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, you know, so to speak, again. And this, I think, is going down the wrong base with the IGIGI. Yeah, they serve the Anunnaki, but they are beings. They're not thought forms.
Right.
They're not egregores. So, you know, again, there's so many different people having different takes on this. But what we have gotten is, again, that until recently there was 3 of the original IGIGI. There's just 1 left here on the planet right now. And again, if you look to the stories, these beings are tied to Mars. Mm-hmm. They're not necessarily from Mars. When we've looked farther back, we see the IGIGI on Nibiru, mm-hmm, with those that you would term the Anunnaki. It seems that there's different classes of beings.
And they're very mobile, so their technology is such where they can go from place to place.
And when we look to some notable beings like Marduk, for instance, because we've remote viewed Marduk, and we've also looked at Enlil and Enki. What we get is that Enlil and Enki right now apparently appear to be still around, but I guess you could term that they're retired.
Yeah, they're not actively in some kind of a control matrix, you know, calling the shots. They're basically doing whatever they want to do because they have served their time in controlling people. So, you know, they've reached a point where they're just doing whatever they do, which I can't tell you. I just know that their existence is not stressful. It's just,
they're kind of retired.
They are. That's the best.
Yeah,
that's the best way to put it. I don't know how to put it, because you'd want some other word for it. It's like, because who knows what Anunnaki do after they're done working? Well, the best way we know is retirement.
Yeah, and again, recognize that the Earth system that we live under does come from them.
It does.
This is their system. You know, whether we're talking, you know, 60 minutes, you know, that whole system that we have, and many equate it, why is everything in sixes? Well, you know, 60 minutes in a day, right? Well, many say it's because they had 6 fingers, and then we have all these legends of 6-fingered giants as well. And then, of course, we have 666. Mm-hmm. You know, all this stuff is right out there in front of us. Now, Marduk, and when I say that, Cindy's eyes go sideways and she wants to look away because she doesn't like what she sees.
No, I don't like his energy at all. I don't like to hone in on it because he's a not nice being at all. He has no problems harming whoever doesn't bend to his will. So, very mean individual. It doesn't mind seeing people in pain.
And do you feel that Marduk still has any sort of influence and power?
Yeah, he still influences mostly through fear now because he's already established his reputation. So they listen. Whoever is under, they listen to him because they've seen him do things that are you just don't, you can't explain it. You wouldn't want to explain it and make you sick.
Are you able to pick up a name for the last IGIGI that's here on Earth right now? And I've never asked her this before.
No.
Can we equate that being to any being from history, from the myths, from the legends?
I mean, no, I can't. Names are, that's my downfall, you know, because you look at names and those are constructs that we use to label each other. And I go by vibration. That's everything that I get, I feel, and I translate that. But sometimes, like in deep meditation, names do come. It's just rare. So if I get anything, I'll let y'all know.
Yeah, I was just wondering if that last one that is left of the original is one that is, you know, either something that we would recognize from the myths and legends, you know, a name like a Marduk, or some of the other ones, maybe Nantora, or any of these other names that we know from the myths and legends, or if this is one that's remained totally cloaked and in secrecy.
That's what I'm getting. I'm getting like a big pushback when I do try to channel Anunnaki. It's like they have this big cloak over them already. So it's very difficult to get the information. The more I dig, the more pushback I feel. So they know how to make these psychic bubbles to keep people out of their business.
Now, well, let me ask you, are there other IGIGI that still come to Earth other than the originals?
Yes, there are other IGIGI that come here and they look over things. They see how the operations are. They see how things are ran, and they might decide to take that back to their own, wherever they're from, and implement the processes that are going on here.
And are they still active on Mars?
They're still active on Mars. They just don't have as much power as they once had. So they find other places. They look for easier targets. So.
And like when we're talking about this particular individual up there, is this a misnomer? Because it's saying Anunnaki, bankster, but truly, are we talking about somebody that has IGIGI blood?
No, he has IGIGI blood for sure. I feel it.
Yeah.
He has like a lot of, when we're dealing with the IGIGI, I feel the first thing I feel is mind control. Mm-hmm. So he has other people under his influence.
Yeah, and this is one of their strong suits, is mind control. Mm-hmm. And that's how they spread this illusion upon the planet. And again, if there's only one of the originals that's here on the planet, just one, and others do come, and there is a council. You've seen that non-human council, mm-hmm. that truly rules the planet, and those are IGIGI.
Yes.
And that's who, for instance, the Pope will report to.
Yep.
And people like George S. Mm-hmm. You know, who George S. and the S is followed by an O and R, and you guys know the rest of it. He is one that has one of the highest percentages of IGIGI blood of the people that we actually see.
Right. I mean, because the ones you see at the top, they're mixed blood, but it's like, how much blood are we looking at here? You know, how strong are the bloodlines? That's why bloodlines with these folks are so critical, important.
Yeah, and it has to do with control and power and certain abilities. Mm-hmm. Again, if kingship is given to us from on high, meaning really it's coming down through these beings.
Mm-hmm.
All these myths and legends about, you know, these wonderful kings and stuff, it's all kind of a twisted thing, because again, they're promoting themselves. Why we need a new king? Why do we need a new king? How about we actually decide what to do ourselves as a unit, as a unity, as a group, instead of giving all power to a king?
Right, because when we pay in what we're supposed to pay in, I'm even scared to say the word, but it starts with a T, and everybody has to pay something. We don't get to decide what happens to that.
No, and it starts with a T and follows with an A and an X.
Yeah.
And, you know, again, all these alphabet soups too, like we know about that SRI, put it up to a mirror, right? That just has like 87,000 new agents coming on board due to number 46. Well, you know, where does all that go? Well, it goes to the FMI, and put that up to a mirror, which is controlled by the NU. Which again, why do we have the structures we have? Because ultimately, this planet is being raped and pillaged, used and abused, and it's just one outpost. Again, it's an outpost. Recognize that, you know, we're under, well, truly, we're under alien control. We could view it that way. So, you know, it's recognizing this. And, you know, again, you know, so many people, it's a distortion to go and look at everything in the biblical point of view, because that's the modern point of view from which they give us a narrow point of view. They try to make it all black and white, and really there's so many different shades of gray in there. And, you know, they try to hide the fact that there's all different types of species. Again, we talked about one of the Puranas, which is one of the Hindu scriptures, which talks about 432,000 different species of humanoid beings in our galaxy alone. How did they know this? Because they're going back to pre-history that we've been given from these beings that have been ruling for, you know, definitely the last 5,000 years. And how long really, you know, have they been here? Well, in one sense, depending on what you're talking about density-wise, because again, we go through the cycle of the yugas, and we're constantly coming back to this same point every 25,920 years or so, thereabouts. It's a cyclical fall. They will make us think the bad guys are the good guys and the good guys are the bad guys. And again, it's all a distortion. So, you know, a lot of people will put this in terms and say, well, really, when you're talking about the Anunnaki, you're talking about the Nephilim. You're talking about fallen angels. Well, what's an angel? The definition really just means a messenger. But as we've gotten, really, everything is consciousness. We have these eternal souls, which can occupy many different forms of bodies, including ultimately just a light body. Angels are beings, truly, that are just helpers. You know, they are people, and they are people that are in service to others. Angels support us. You know, guides support us. You'll have people of a fundamentalist standpoint. Like I remember when there was a song that came out by Queensryche, for those of you guys that know Queensryche, and many people took that song, Silent Lucidity, to be all scary new agey thought. Oh my God, you got guides sitting by your side. They're all demons coming to get you. Well, that's basically what the Annunaki IGIGI wants you to think. They don't want you knowing that there's benevolent people out there. People, because they are people. Individuals that are here to help you. They want you cut off from them. So they get you to fear them, thinking that they're all demons, when really the demons are giving you your belief system in the first place. Because really, when you look at who are, you know, who is Satan, it's the system. So really, the ones that are the adversary to humanity are the IGIGI, for sure. And again, Anunnaki is such a big term that it does include many different beings. And, again, there's different races out there. There's different people with different agendas. So we have to recognize that. There are, again, as what I was trying to get to you guys, is that, there are beings that are not necessarily evil, but they're not necessarily benevolent towards us, that are having dealings with our military and the world government. They are going into Area 51 and other of the top secret military bases on a daily basis doing trade. They are trading, but they're not the Galactic Federation. They're not, quote unquote, white hats. Again, I feel like all these distortions, white hats, black hats, we need to move a little bit past that. Yeah, you could view that they're definitely black hats from the sense that, these beings that do run the show here have been running the show, but they're losing their control now because we're moving too much into the light. Yeah, you could put a black hat on them. You could put them on a horse and wait for John Wayne to come over the hill in his white hat. But again, it's oversimplifying things.
It sure is.
It is. So I just wanted to share some of these things with you. Have you ever seen this before?
That was really a trip. That's super cool. Yeah, grab yourself a dollar bill and roll it up, and then take a pencil, preferably a pencil, and start filling it in. That's really cool. And you can find other pictures online of that.
And we know, all the symbolism that abounds. DC was set up on Masonic principles, but also on Vedic astrology, because they know the power. Because every single star that you see in the sky is a being. That's a living entity. The planet's a living entity. The sun's a living entity. If we were to see most of us as we really, really are, we're just simply orbs. We're orbs of light. We're energy. Now we're in these vehicles. We're animating these vehicles right now. Whenever one of the benevolent beings comes through in a channeling, like we had a channeling with a set who is known as Isis, she made it clear again. She even semi was like, I don't like to come through except for when I want to give you some information that's really important, because I don't want to interfere with your human experience. This is a human experience that we're having. This is not forever. And you're not going to be judged by some vindictive God. Again, when we see these beings always pretending to be something that they're not, it's a human experience. It's a temporary experience, but it's an important one, because this is how we grow. This is how we grow spiritually. In some ways, many of us have put us into this situation knowing what we're facing, knowing that we're facing something very dark, very ominous, not going to be easy. But you know what? If you want to equate it to a game, the experience points you get are going to level you up. And we are leveling up. We're going to level up to the 5th density, and we're going to be heading out of here. Yes, we do have 4D, which is where we are when we're basically in the sleep state. Many, many different species have walked this planet, and many will again. When we get out of this dark age, then we will be greeted by many benevolent beings. That big quote-unquote comet that's coming, that's going to get really close to Saturn in 2031, is actually a mothership, and it's kind of a greeting ship. It's an orientation ship. And as our dear sister Jan has said, that many of the ships of the Galactic Federation are even the size of planets or larger. Yes, we will be greeted by benevolent beings again when we come out on the other side. But this is not their fight. This is our fight. This is our struggle to overcome. And this is how we level up.
It is. It's our chance to find out what we're made of. And, I personally don't want to get almost to the finish line and then have somebody else come take my glory. I can do this. I can pull my own soul up. Anybody who comes to take from me the undiscovered power that I do have, I don't see as a benevolent being.
Say you're training for a fight. Say you're a mixed martial artist, and you go to the best camp that there is in the country, and you train under the best trainers. You don't go into the ring and then all of a sudden, okay, coach, you get them.
Right. You don't. Yeah, exactly.
Think about it in those terms. The bigger picture. The bigger picture is what we have to recognize. And so, again, they've basically twisted everything. And we touched on this a week or two ago. Fire and brimstone, Sodom and Gomorrah, perhaps destroyed by a cosmic fireball, evidence shows. The biblical sin cities of Sodom and Gomorrah could have been destroyed by a meteor, a cloud burst that incinerated all 8,000 inhabitants, fascinating new study suggests. The giant space rock exploded over the town 3,650 years ago, creating a fireball. Scientists say the same event might have given rise to the tales of Jericho's walls tumbling down, as that city was just 20 miles away. In the Bible, God was said to have been enraged by the wickedness of the inhabitants
Yes.
of Sodom and Gomorrah, raining fire and brimstone upon them. Now there seems to be hard evidence that a heavenly event really did happen around that time. The cosmic calamity laid waste to the Jordan River Valley's northern shore, razing a huge 100-acre city to the ground. It also exterminated other cities and multiple small villages. There would have been no survivors. The epicenter of Jordan is located in what is today known as Tal el-Hammam. An ancient palace was flattened along with the perimeter walls and other structures. Detonation occurred about 2.5 miles above ground. Even at that distance, the blast created a 740-mile-an-hour shockwave. It would have leveled most of the buildings. None of the 8,000 residents would have survived the initial blast or the rock melting temperatures that followed. How many of you guys are aware that modern day NUKESs detonate above ground? And they create blast waves. We know they could create an EMP. And again, was this actually technology? Human remains suggest they have been blown up or incinerated, with extreme disarticulation and fragmentation of bones. Temperatures greater than 2,000 degrees Celsius. So was this just a meteor that came down? Was this the wrath of God? Again, all the things that are translated God in the Bible, they're not originally translated as God. They were either translated as Yah, as in Yahweh, or El, and El is, basically El was the Canaanite storm god. And El in the Bible, when we look to the most original, Elohim, the mighty ones, the powerful ones. None of it is talking about the source of all creation in the multiverse. These are, again, stories of beings. It's not of source. And I do wonder sometimes whether people, if they realize that when they're talking about the Bible and talking about the gods, some stories are referencing perhaps Enlil, some are referencing perhaps Enki, if we go back to the original stories. And would they bow down if they realized that these were really not the source of everything, but just these beings that view humanity as slaves? Unfortunately, I think there are some people that would welcome them in.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some on Earth right now that know this reality. They know it totally. There's top-level politicians, and again, Pope Leo was on record as saying the myth that we have made of Christ has served us well. Well, Yeshua did exist, and he did have amazing teachings to give us, and he was trying to get us ready for getting out of the Kali Yuga, getting out of the Dark Age. And that was all distorted. And so they've twisted and made reality myth and myth reality.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is a distortion here. So could they have taken this out? Could they have just simply nudged an asteroid and have it go in and take out some of humanity? When we talk about the Tower of Babel, in remote viewing it, you saw that it was a breakaway civilization where people were getting along, and I'm speaking to Cindy in this. She saw it was a breakaway civilization. People were getting along. People understood the bigger picture, and they were trying to get outside of the system. Just like we are being nudged to do right now. If you want to escape this system, we have to make an alternative, and we need to get to the point where more and more people are outside of the system so that the system crumbles from within because it's no longer relevant. Well, the Tower of Babel incident was one of those incidents. Unfortunately, it was too deep in the Kali Yuga, the Dark Age, because now the light is coming in and their power is waning and our power is growing. And that's why you see everything that you see happening right now. Well, you know, they came down and they destroyed it. Was this perhaps something to do with that Tower of Babel incident? Is this perhaps some technology and wiping out from above a civilization that maybe, you know, recognized that, hey, we're being controlled by beings that are not so nice. Let's get outside of the system. Yeshua wasn't a Essene. The Essenes lived in their own communities, and they did their own thing and stayed as separate from the system as they could because they believed the system was of the enemy, Satan, which literally means the adversary or enemy.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, I mean, it's just really important that we recognize what we're dealing with. And if you're just now awakening, most people are really, really afraid to step out of that box. But understand you're only afraid because of conditioning. So keep nudging yourself forward. Keep moving yourself forward. Keep learning. Keep picking up new books. Keep gaining new understanding. And then start to develop your own spiritual practice so that you can bring in your own knowing.
Exactly. That's the most important thing. So thank you guys so much for your support on Ko-Fi and Patreon. Check out Medicinal Foods, link on top of every channel. Use the code EEA to get a discount as well. And share your thoughts and share what you want us to cover more. Let us know where you want us to go. Do you have any thoughts for remote viewing? Do you have anything you want us to ask Laurel, the Galactics? Or we could even, when we're able to contact and get through to Aset, Isis, and some of the devas, we could ask them as well, because they are there to help us, and they have always been there. It's just that we have been cut off from them. As always, guys, God bless and namaste.
Namaste.